Hi folks, welcome back to Game Geeks. I'm your host, Kurt Wiegel. I want to get something out of the way now before we start today's review episode, which is Shaintar, for those of you who are wondering. Yes, I'm in a wheelchair. I had an unfortunate accident during the last dress rehearsal of Young Frankenstein where I fell off of my 4-inch shoes and managed to break bones in both of my legs. So this is only temporary, but the irony in this is early on in Game Geeks, when we first went to YouTube, there was a significant number of people who legitimately thought that I was a paraplegic or for some reason in a wheelchair, because apparently for the first 50 or so episodes, you never saw anything lower than about here on me. And people just assumed, oh, well, maybe he doesn't move for a reason. Not that, oh, it's easier for him to sit and review things. But the first time you saw my knees, I think, was in Grimm. You can go back to previous episodes on GameGeeksRPG.com and watch that one. It's also the first time you got to see my kids. Right after that, you saw my son and I lightsaber fighting. And you haven't seen them since we've all had to go into witness protection since the unfortunate D&D 4th edition review. Anyway, back to today's episode, which is Shaintar. Now, Shaintar has gotten a lot of love from us at Game Geeks in the past. It is one of the first Savage World setting books we reviewed way back in the... So please go back. It's either on Game Geeks Classics on YouTube or on GameGeeksRPG.com. You can go back and check it there. That was back when it was done sort of in its first nucleation, its first iteration. It was done as a beta test through Reality Blur's games several years ago, and then now it is being published through Savage Mojo, and I think this is what we would like to call the author's preferred version, or the preferred edition, because it has the nice color cover. It's got pretty much everything I think Sean Patrick Fannon wants to include inside of a game. Now, because of this, there's been a lot of hands on this game over the years. And you can definitely see other people's fingerprints on it, but it is most definitely the love child of Sean Patrick Fannon, and it's been what he's been pushing since I've known him for his RPG career. What you have with Shaintar, it is a Savage Worlds powered game. So you need at least the Savage Worlds core rulebook, currently in the Savage Worlds Deluxe Explorers Edition, which you can buy for $10 at a variety of vendors. What separates Shaintar from some of the other fantasy settings, such as Hellfrost, such as Caledon Falls, this is a high epic fantasy setting. This is the fantasy setting that we're used to seeing in a lot of other fantasy games, such as Dungeons and Dragons, such as Palladium, games along those lines. What does that mean? Well, you've got your standard fantasy races, humans, elves, although they're named other things, dwarves, and it's interesting, he actually directly addresses why the dwarves are not that much changed from the classic point of view, as opposed to elves, which get some more flavor, and the reason for that is dwarves are just awesome the way they are. You don't need to change them. You have a variety of other races to choose from, such as the cat-like Brianch, or Branich, again, I'm sorry, I don't always know how to say these things, or the reptilian Dragadorians. Orcs and goblins are also a possibility. You have winged elves, you have high elves, you have wood or medium elves, you have half elves, you have sort of like a sea-bearing ninja monk half-elf in there too. There's a variety of races for you to choose from, and some options for customizability if that's the route you want to go. Like all Savage Worlds products, this isn't directly a classed system. You can build a character with a variety of abilities, although focus does help you and does provide some niche protection. Magic itself is divided up into a variety of different sources, some of which are quite recognizable, and some of them are different and rather unique to the setting. For instance, sorcery, which is your standard magic, is about what you would expect it to look like and is probably the closest to core Savage Worlds magic, although they do rename power points to essence just to give it its own feel and flavor. Other options include Druidism, which is less I worship trees and bunnies and more channeling the spirits of life and nature. And some of the elements, there are some that are not included for background reasons. The Way, which is sort of a combination of foo powers and psychic abilities, which can either be isolated, spun out separately, or combined together. And you also have Alchemists, which can sort of, they're a little bit of a lesser magic out there, artificers who do roughly the same thing. Then you have the power of light, which is the Church of Arcanon, which is its own, really one of the only major deities outlined in this setting. So this isn't a game where you're tripping over 1,001 gods like you are in, say, Greyhawk or the Forgotten Realms. Finally, you have some of the nastier magics. You have necromancers, which tap into the power of the undead and the shadow. Acolytes, which use their power to fuel from the fire and the abyss, and demons. So, it's a lot of magic to choose from. Or you could just play a fighting type who likes to hit things with your sticks, or swords, or other metal instruments of torture. The game itself is set up to scale well as you increase in power. One of the things, and to kind of come back to magic to discuss it here, now these are called applications. And they allow you to add certain levels of effect and power to what you do. For example, you could increase the range, increase the area, make it armor penetrating, block from piercing, that is, make it tougher. And all of these can be combined into different spells that you then name something else. For example, pulling one out of the book here, Gabriel's Clumsy Oath, which is a lower trait and it's linked ×2. For additional essence, meaning a total of 8 spent, the lower trait can be cast to deplete agility as well as fighting and shooting the die types as well. That also affects your parry. So no longer are you targeting just one thing with those sorts of spells. Now these do require you to buy an edge as you level up that you can apply these later on. Personally, I would play it as I like my magicians to be a little bit more powerful. You would probably buy that edge and then you could apply it on the fly as long as you had the essence to spend on the spell itself. Now there are 2 books in this series. The first one is Legends Arise, which I have in front of me, which covers roughly novice through seasoned through veteran characters. It also gives you some of the background. There's a nice bestiary at the back of critters that you're likely to fight. So this is clearly a GM and player book. And some of the information on the world itself to give you a baseline from which to operate. One of the things that this game promotes that really kind of drives it home is the idea that you work for an organization that gives you orders. It kind of gives you a reason other than you're just murder hobos looking for something to do, or you meet in a bar and are bored. You work probably for an organization known as Grayson's Grey Rangers, which patrols the Southlands and tries to do good, stop the dark forces from working, etc., etc., etc. In fact, adventures and campaigns that grow out of that are usually based on, here's what happens with your first orders, here's what you discover, you take it back, you assemble from there, etc., etc., etc. Shifting gears slightly to Shaintar Legends Unleashed, which is what I have in this book here. Now with Legends Unleashed, this assumes the heroic and legendary levels for your characters. And folks, let me tell you, at this point, shit gets real. This is the stage where you can turn your magic into the stuff of legends, where you can imprison people in vines and trees forever with the right spell and the right, if you have enough essence to dump on it, or enough essence to throw at it through a variety of sources. This is where your Mordenkainens come in, your Elminsters, although I hate using the E word there, your Raistlins, your other wizards and priests of incredible power. It also gives you the ability to really scale up what you're doing, introduces more of the, I hate to use the word meta plot here, but some of the background stuff of what's going on in the creation of the world, as well as in the background for the setting, and some of the other power players that are in this world. And so you're not just living in a static world where nothing exists until you go to interact with it. This can be a living, breathing world. Finally, there is a bestiary of foes worthy of the most legendary characters that will take more than just a magic sword, a strong arm, and some potent spells to take down. Some of these, you practically have to restructure a society to properly weaken them. I have had a love-on for Shaintar for a long time because it was one of the first settings that really showed me what Savage Worlds can do in a traditional sense. Most Savage Worlds games, most Savage Worlds products are, especially those directly from Pinnacle, are engineered to be a little bit different. They didn't want to give you an average sci-fi game, they give you Last Parsec, or they give you Space 1889. They didn't want to give you a Western game that's boring, so they gave you Deadlands. With Shaintar, you get a land of epic, high fantasy. If you like high fantasy and the idea of your characters being able to fundamentally change the world on an almost primal level by the time you're done adventuring, and you like the Savage Worlds rule set, which I do for its versatility and flexibility and ease of play, then you really cannot go wrong with Shaintar. Something else I wanted to talk about was to thank all of our donors toward the products we need to continue doing Game Geeks and bring it to you in high def. We're about halfway to the high def editor now. So please check for your name at the end of this episode as it scrolls across the screen. And make sure that we haven't misspelled it or inadvertently left it off, because if we have, please, please, please let us know. Send us an email at gamegeeksrpg.com and we will correct that quickly and efficiently. Like I said, we're about halfway to our editor. We're really not worried about the camera right now. We just want to do what we can to bring you the best episodes that we can do, because let's face it, now that I'm in this wheelchair and now that I can move around more, you got to be able to keep up with me, folks. I'm hell on wheels. For Game Geeks, I'm host Kurt Wiegel. Good day and good gaming.